all the time, even when online.
This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
The power of
conversation. It could change your whole life. INCRadio Chatline. Conversations that matter.
They say that growing up is hard to do. Yeah, sometimes, maybe. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Arnie says no, she disagrees. That's a song. I'm not gonna mention. I don't even know who the artist is, to be honest with you, but I'm pretty sure that's a song. But that is also what we're talking about today here on INCRadio Chatline, where we have conversations that matter. No particular reason why we have this topic today, just something interesting to talk about, because I feel like for me, there's a lot of things I didn't think, or let me rephrase my statement. There's a lot of things that a lot of misconceptions that I had when I was younger versus now. I wouldn't say I'm old now, but because some of you are like, well, if you're calling yourself old, what about us? No, I'm not calling anybody old here. But as we age, right, I think it's only natural that we learn things that we didn't realize were exactly how we thought it was going to be. So my question to everyone, even those who are tuning in with us there in the YouTube live chat, don't be fooled by the thumbnail or the title. We are talking about growing up today, between who we were yesterday and today. We'll just put it that way, so we're not talking too much about age. Were there things that you guys, when you were younger, like assumptions that you had when you were a child about being grown up?
You can do everything you want.
You can do everything you want. Okay, that's interesting, EJ.
You have the freedom to do everything you want. Oh, sorry, Arnie, didn't mean to.
And you can stay up as long as you want, because as a kid, we were forced to go to bed at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But I figured, hey, look, my parents are still awake, and it's who knows what time it is. So I thought you could stay up whenever you want, just for the fun of it, not knowing it's because we had responsibilities.
It's the
breakfast for dinner. Breakfast for dinner. Breakfast for dinner. I still do that now, so I don't know. You may. I do that.
It's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's so sad. Maybe it was just me then. It depends on what your breakfast is, I guess. I would still do cereal for dinner though, but I was talking more like pancakes or French toast. I don't know. Nate, what about you?
I think the biggest thing is that I never thought I would ever be old, and yet here I am, old and gray. It just sneaks up on you. But yeah,
I was wondering what it was about.
I'm not doing this the whole show, by the way. This is beyond itchy, so.
I was gonna say, you seem like you aged since the last show, like quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Maybe I'll just keep the eyebrows now.
Earlier, I was wondering what the... I knew he was going to use it for a joke. I just didn't know what the joke was.
We are talking about age today. So that is something that I didn't expect the gray to come so early. I know for some people, just because of genetics, they get it sometimes even when they're younger. But for mine, it came earlier than I got
Arnie's
like, no.
I got a haircut one time, and underneath it was all gray, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is happening." So,
you can't see it here, but yeah, that's like I have a lot of grays, like here on the sides, particularly.
And I think it has to do with how you deal with life, because I think I'm older than all of you guys here, and I've got one gray hair.
Oh
like literally
no.
just one.
Sometimes it's
I mean,
genetics though, Arnie. It's not
yeah.
always because of
Or
stress.
No, because my
I
younger siblings and no, everyone in my family they already have their grays. Even my sister who's younger than me and my brother, because they're married, have kids, so they got all that stuff.
Mm.
But when you're single, one white hair at my age.
Yeah, I think my family's
or
genetics are trying to decide whether I'm going to lose all my hair or not. Because
Oh
on my
no.
mom's side, they kept all their hair. On my dad's side, they lost it. So, yep, stuff to deal with.
probably I don't want to say it, probably gonna end up somewhere in the middle.
I'm I do embrace the gray though. I do not plan on
Yes.
ever dyeing my hair ever, and it's just going to be what it is.
It's just so much work. I've seen like people try to keep up with it. I'm like, I don't think that I could do that for forever. I don't
I
know how
think
they
it's a
do it. I
trend.
mean, to each his own.
I
What does
think
that
that's a
make?
trend now. Like ash
Is
gray
it
hair. I feel like it's a
silver?
trend. I've been seeing
Letting your
people
hair
like
gray.
do it. Like they just put like how do you get balayage? Am I saying it right? They use gray, and I don't know why
Uh,
it's a trend. So
I mean,
Hmm.
what's that dude? Like bleaches your hair or something?
they just color their hair gray. Apparently, they
Uh,
like it. They like to
I
look
didn't know.
old. I guess. I don't
Hmm.
know.
Oh,
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't probably
I'm
wouldn't have
sorry.
dyed my hair. Like if
My
you told
age
me
is not
earlier
your
that that was
costume.
popular. Yes, it is not a consequence.
I was literally wearing a costume. Yeah.
So we've covered sleep so far. We've covered hair. Is there any other like misconceptions or assumptions you guys had when you were younger that are like
So
just blown out
I
of the
wanted
water? And
to
you're like,
I wanted to expand earlier on what I said about like you can do anything you want. It's like at a young age, like you just see adults and you're like they get to decide where where to go, what to do. Like
They have
it
more
seems like they have
freedom.
so much freedom,
More
to
freedom.
decide things. Yeah, but when you get to that age, like I won't say like I won't call myself old either. I'm only 26, but you realize that those like that freedom also comes with responsibilities. And you're like, ah, see, as a kid, you only saw the freedom, you didn't see the responsibility because
for sure.
at that point in your life, you haven't experienced like having those responsibilities put on you yet.
Yeah, it's like I would always see my older cousins and all of them go out with their friends and go out to restaurants and like you had to stay home like with your mom or you couldn't go. You had to be with the titas or like with your aunts and whatever. And then you're like you realize when you get older like oh they go out because they have money to actually like go out and they have to work to get that money. You're like oh okay, and they also have to pay for their cars and they have to pay for the insurance for their cars too. It was like this is a lot.
You know,
And it's
on that point, like as a kid, you're afraid of a lot of these adult things like responsibilities, and it seems like it would be scary. One example that I can think of is when you're in school and you have to do a school project, right? And you dread it. You're like, oh, I got to do this, like maybe once every few months. I got to do this project, and then I realized, like, hey, as an adult, I do a project like that. Like that's all work is like projects. And the way I think about it is like, yeah, it's harder as an adult, but at the same time, especially if you have a pretty decent upbringing, like you're just equipped to be able to handle it emotionally, physically, mentally, all that. So I do find that yes, it is true. Be getting older can be difficult, but at the same time, you can make yourself stronger to be ready for it.
That sounds hopeful. I'd like to be hopeful. Arnie, thoughts?
One of my misconceptions was we didn't have to take naps. As a kid, they force you to take naps. And as an adult, it's like, oh, look, they have the freedom not to take naps, right? But then now I'm like, I wish I took more naps.
Yeah, nap is a
you realize it's
luxury.
not a freedom. I was gonna say you realize it's not really a freedom. It's just like they don't have time to nap. It's not that they don't take naps. You're like as an adult, you're kind of like, I wish I could take a nap.
Yeah, it becomes more
But
prescriptive. You're like, man, I feel terrible right now. I think I'm gonna go lay down for 15 minutes and set my alarm. And
Yes.
the bad thing about taking naps, though, sometimes you wake up 6 hours later.
I can't even do that anymore. You know how when your mind is just going and when you know that there's
Yeah.
things that you have to do. So even with the 15-minute nap, sometimes I wake up before it's the 15 minutes because I'm like, oh, I have to do that thing. I need to get up now.
No,
I used
I'm
to
with
do
you
the
there,
3 hour
Tony.
nap.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Tony. I can't even take naps anymore. Like if I kind of like lean on the couch and just like close my eyes, I'm not really napping. I'm just resting my eyes, like quite literally resting my eyes because I'm not even asleep. I'm just trying to get rid of like the headache that I'm feeling at the moment.
Well, then you find out as an adult that not all naps are good. Sometimes you'll wake up from a nap feeling like worse. Something to do with like your sleep
Yeah.
cycles.
Yeah,
You could
it's
do
just
more
like
harm
what
than
you
good.
said, like after like if you sleep longer than 2 hours for like a nap, you're gonna feel actually more tired. Is that it? I can't remember. I can't quite remember what they said. I think it's like two. Like if you sleep longer than 2 hours, or if you nap, I should say longer than 2 hours, you actually wake up more tired. But
Yeah,
yes.
that's me anytime I sleep, not just for naps. I'm just always you realize I don't know if this is for you guys. Do you always just feel tired? I always feel tired. Like
Most days, yeah.
most days. Arnie's like, nah, I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
I feel like
Aren't you just
feel like
living
tired
What is
after.
life carefree?
What
And
is
you
your
know what's
secret?
funny is because when I go to work, all of my coworkers, which a lot of them are younger than me, they have their coffees and everything to keep them awake. And then, I'm all peppy and everything. And they're like, did you have your coffee already? And I'm like, no. They're like, how could you be this awake? And I'm not even a morning person. Okay. But I think it's like if you're excited to do things or if you're excited about something, it doesn't really matter how tired you are. It's like you're not tired.
That's true.
Mm.
Mm,
I guess
no,
there
I
are
feel
just
bad.
people who's ready to grow up, and there are people who's not ready to grow up, probably.
That are ready to grow up, me. Who is
Arnie was the former.
There are some people who are like, I want to stay a kid, and maybe that's why they're not ready to face life. And there are like people, I'm ready. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to earn money, and they're like always jumping around in the workplace, and I'm like, okay.
I have a question.
Sounds
Like,
like Arnie.
that's an interesting thing you mentioned. So I have a question for all you guys. Like when was the point where you realized that you had to grow up?
Me
Oh,
When
was
you,
when I moved out of the house and I realized I had to pay for everything because, you know, parents are not paying for the bills anymore when you're off in school and you gotta, take care of yourself. That's what you gotta do. But you know what was Bryn made a comment. He says, growing up, I thought money grows on trees. My parents would always have money in their pockets. I was the same way because anytime I asked my grandma for money, it was like here. So I just figured, oh, okay, they just got unlimited amount of money. And I thought the ATM was you could just go there and take money out, and it didn't matter how much money you had in your account. It was just like a free for all.
Oh, wait till you get your first paycheck and you're like, wait,
Um,
I calculated this earlier. This is not adding up. Where did my
you-
money
yes.
go? Why is
Yes.
30% of it
oh, I have
missing?
the answer. Food.
yes.
Food.
Moments like that,
What about
like
food?
instances like that it makes me kind of glad that my parents kind of like instilled and like me and my brothers growing up like that like they instilled in us growing up that like our money's not infinite. Like like yes, we can buy this like really expensive toy, but then we won't be able to buy this. Right? Like making us like realize that stuff early on, I think is like I wouldn't call myself stingy, but it's like I'm more considerate with like, okay, how much money do I actually have left? Like if I spend this, am I gonna have enough to pay for this?
Constant calculations going off in your constant math. I
Yes.
feel like just
It
everything.
makes me feel
Anytime
assured
you
though.
purchase.
Yeah.
You feel assured.
Yeah, it makes me feel assured to have like an because I like having extra in the bank, extra in my wallet, just in case, like maybe I need to pay in cash, then I have cash in my wallet, and like, or if there's like an emergency expense that I need to pay, I have like, I had money in the bank to pay for it. Like I'm not worried. So like, there's that reassurance there.
Wow, EJ is wise with his money. I don't know that I was at your age if I was quite wise yet with with my money. That's I don't know.
Man,
That's one thing that has been
you had mentioned food earlier, and I know like growing
it is-
up, I'm like, oh, I can eat candy and sugary cereal all day, and then I get older, and I'm like, nope, can't eat that. And then like you eat like spicy food, and you're like, huh, I guess I can't eat that either anymore. Is that what you meant by food?
No, you were asking like where all my money would go. So food is the top of the list.
I thought you were
Food.
doing a hard transition to a new topic.
So,
Maybe we
but
can do a transition to food.
but to add
Well,
what to what
no,
Nick was
Oh,
saying, it's true though, because when you were younger, you literally could eat anything and you don't gain a pound.
That's
And then now,
true.
you hit like a certain age, 30, um, then it doesn't matter what you're eating, you're just always gaining weight unless you exercise. And who wants to
mhm.
exercise?
That's true. You
It's
gotta do a lot of
metabolism.
extra stuff to keep everything off. And I'm like, what?
No, it's just metabolism. It's like how kids like they play a lot. So like if you're like the one kid who's like always running around, your metabolism is just it's quick. Like that was me growing up. I did not gain a pound. Which was a problem because I was like really skinny growing up, but because I was like that one kid is like everywhere in like at parties, at school, everywhere. I'm always running around, running around the place. But like when we got here, we are like, or when I reached like my teen years, where I like I kind of like I stopped playing outside, spent more time sitting down playing video games. Like that's when I noticed like I'm seeing myself kind of like grow, but like horizontally.
of course, no
So
comment, EJ.
Bryn also made another comment. He said, when I was a kid, I thought if you swallow a seed from calamansi, it grows inside you.
Yeah,
I thought the same thing
that.
when it came
Everybody
from watermelons. I remember because I loved watermelon, and every time we would swallow the seed accidentally, we would freak out because I honestly thought that it would grow inside.
That was the same with gum. If you swallowed your gum, then it would stay inside you for like 7 years.
for 7
Yeah,
years.
that's
Yeah,
what they
I
say.
remember
There's
that.
7 years.
But is that true or is it a myth?
That is a myth.
Yeah, I think I think they debunked that on one of those debunker shows.
That's
Yeah.
another thing too. As you grow up, you realize a lot of these things that people told you growing up, like, hey, don't swallow your gum because it'll stay inside you for 7 years. You find out that is wrong. So that's another thing you find out as you get older. It's like, man, adults really lied to me a lot.
Yes.
I mean,
One of
I
the
get
things
why they
that
do it though sometimes, because like as a kid, you probably won't get like the actual explanation. So they kind of just simplified like an explanation that your kid brain would be like, okay, yeah, like it just associates oil, like like oh, swallowing like watermelon seeds is like bad. I shouldn't do that, or
see,
swallowing gum is bad. Like, don't do that
but
because
they
you're not
never
supposed
said
to
it was
swallow it.
they never said it was bad that if you swallowed watermelon, that's just what I assumed. But to go off of what you said, Nate, it's so true because they said don't make funny faces or mean faces because if a certain wind passes, your face is going to stay like that forever, which
Yeah, I
that
heard that.
is a lie.
I mean, Arnie, what's like the lesson there? Like without without the myth, what's the lesson? Don't make
Don't
faces
stick
at
your tongue out
strangers.
at people when they do weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't make faces at strangers. Basically,
That's the
that's
thing
not
I'm
it. That's the lesson.
that's the thing I'm conscious about though when I'm like teaching my son things. It's like he can fact check me nowadays, so I shouldn't be telling him like fibs and lies and whatnot, even if it is trying to curb his behavior. It's just I just tell him the truth. So
Mhm. That's wise.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have that kind of comparison with your son, Nate? Like do you see yourself like the things like questions maybe that he'll ask? Do you see yourself like, oh yeah, I used to think stuff like that before too.
Well, I remember like my parents being like, "Oh, you don't want to go outside because there's like monsters," and we know that monsters aren't real. that we know of. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm like, there's plenty of things in the real world that are scary enough. I don't need to make up something. So if I
Yeah.
tell my son something, I don't have to, make up some kind of story or myth or whatever. I could just be like, no, you don't want to go outside because you could run into a spider's web or something because you can't see anything. Although he does like spiders, but yeah, you just don't want to be outside in the cold, And I it's a little more scientific, I guess, because like I remember our parents telling us, like, don't go outside with a jacket or you'll get cold.
Right.
You'll catch a cold. Whereas like I will tell my son, like, well, the reason why you'll get sick is your immune system will be compromised and blah 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 blah. So it's a little more like accurate, I guess. Because I remember like my parents telling me that you don't wear a jacket, you'll be cold. And I'll be thinking, well, that one time I didn't wear my jacket and I didn't get cold, so I must be a superhero. So
Is there anything, because we kind of mentioned stuff that, breaking the bubble. Was there anything that you thought when you were a kid that actually stood the test of time? Like, yeah, that was accurate.
lots of advice. I mean, like, do good in school, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Listen,
be respectful. Being respectful too. Like they teach you, adults trying to teach you to be respectful. And then when you get older, you do see the value in like, okay, if I foster lots of respect with the people around me, you'll get a better repertoire with people. You'll it's a lot easier to work with people, of course, if you need some help. Because when you're a kid, you don't see past, 5 seconds. So it's
Right.
like be rude to somebody, and then you're like, oh no, I need something from this person, but I kind of ruined that relationship with them. So yeah, stuff like that really stuck with me. That our parents were really right about a lot of behavioral things and like things you should do now. Of course, easy to understand as we're adults now. So as a parent, trying to think of good ways to convey that to my son, because when my parents told me, I didn't believe them fully.
So
Maybe.
Vern had put something on the chat where he says he was told to stay away from credit cards, and he said it's super true. And I think that's true because that was the same thing my dad always told us, where if you can't pay for it, don't buy it. And he was really strung up about not having credit cards. And, but sometimes we don't listen.
Sometimes.
I mean,
My
the
favorite one
rule
is
with
like,
like credit.
sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite one is like, if you can't buy it twice, don't even think about it.
Oh,
That's a
explain
good
that.
one.
Explain that. Explain how that works.
Like, if you can't afford one thing, why even bother? If you you can't afford to buy it again, why even buy it the first time? Unless you're really like saving for it. But if it's just like a splurge of the moment, like you see something and it's really out of your price range, why even? That's
I've
what
never heard that one. That's interesting.
really. That's what my dad would always tell me. It's like, don't even. I mean, right now you can't, but maybe one day you can. But right now, don't force it. Don't force to buy something that you can't even afford yet. So I don't know.
Don't
That's
buy
one
stuff
thing.
with the money you don't have. Right?
That's another one.
I know lately
Thing with
though,
credit cards.
I'd put things in a shopping cart, online shopping cart, and I would let it sit there. And then like I would
Ooh,
come
that's
back a
actually
few hours
effective.
later and I'd be like, nah,
How
I
do
don't
I
need
feel
that. I'll
about it?
remove it.
That's actually
Yeah.
very effective. That's what I do when I'm shopping. Like if I like something, I would carry it around, and if I just drop it, that means I don't need it. But if I carry it around until like the end of my shopping spree, that means I need it. Unless you're forgetful, so that's not effective for you.
I'm
You just
forgetful.
carry it around.
That's not
You
me.
walk in, like, oh wait, that's the whole
You
thing.
walk out with it. No, I'm just joking.
I don't put anything in my cart. I do checkout now.
Oh, you're
Arnie,
daring,
no.
Arnie.
One of them.
Arnie, no.
And it's funny though, because like my sisters and I, we share like accounts and stuff, and every once in a while you'll get a group message saying, hey, y'all need to clear out the cart because there's too much stuff in the cart that people keep putting in there and buying. And my comment always is, yeah, none of that is mine, because if I click on it, I'm buying it right then and there.
Yeah, that's where that save for later is really handy. You're like, okay,
Yes.
save for later, save for later, save for later.
Arnie, you're like Arnie's the type to not let the guilt like right away. She's like, okay, before I feel guilty for buying this, I'm gonna hit checkout.
And
You need a
I
prompt that
don't
says,
know.
"Are you sure?"
I don't know if it's really about the guilt though. It's because for the longest time, I never really bought anything for myself. Like even when I went places, I would always buy it for my nephews or, my sisters and all that, but I would never get it for myself. And so I'm I started losing like friends, who were much younger than me. And I'm like, wait, why am I gonna like deprive myself of things when you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow? So now I'm at the point where hey, if I want it, I will get it as long as I can afford it. And if I can't, oh well.
But will you know if you can afford it when you're about to purchase it, or is it after they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have?
Oh, I know before I purchase it if I could
Okay.
afford it or not. But then if it's like a vacation, sometimes I know I can't afford it, but you know what? I need to de-stress, so I'm gonna do it anyways.
I have a question for you guys. Do you like before you hit like the checkout? Do you check your bank account first, and then you kind of like try to figure out, okay, if I spend this money, like this is what I'm gonna have left in my bank account, and am I happy with that?
No,
Am I
because
happy with that amount?
I think because the way my parents raised us, like we knew how to manage money. And so I was to the point when we still had checkbooks back in the day when you guys probably don't know what that is. But back in the days when we had checkbooks, mine literally was to the penny. So I knew how much money I had. So even now that I don't use a ledger or anything when I get paid and all that stuff, I know how much money I have. So I know what I can and cannot spend. And I think that's one thing that I'm kind of good at. So I don't have to think about it. It's like, oh, I know I could afford this, click, and I'm done. And then leave it at that.
That was one of the things that stressed me out when I was younger is that I always heard that all the time. Oh, I have to balance my checkbook. And now, like, when I got to the point that I was earning money, I was like, oh, I don't need it anymore. Cool.
An app does it for you anyway.
You know the secret to balancing a checkbook, because I'm also old enough to remember having to do that, was to like always round it up or round it up by a few dollars. And then whenever you did check your checking account, you're like, whoa, I got extra money. How about that? So that was a trick for balancing it. So that lasted all of like 2 years before everything became debit cards, though, for me.
Shift. Yeah, that's kind of now that I think about it, there's like the whole generational like aspect too of assumptions that we might have had when we were younger versus Nate or versus Arnie, like just depending on when you were growing up.
Yeah,
I didn't think that the phone would be what it is now. I was like, oh, then this is kind of crazy that it's like a computer in your pocket. It's stuff I didn't imagine like happening.
Well, then like
being
for that,
amazed.
for like that, I don't take that for granted. I'm like, this is a computer in my pocket. Yeah,
For
and I know
sure.
what it was like having a computer that you had to like type everything on a black screen. You had to like know the commands.
Mhm.
So
Well, not even that. Right now the internet is easily accessible. Before, um, first of all, no one could be on the phone because you had to dial into the internet. And if somebody was on the phone, guess what? You couldn't do that. Or if you were online and someone needed the phone, you would have to disconnect to get on. So I think seeing how things have evolved
Mhm.
is, it's something that you can't fathom if you were growing up in the time that Nate was growing up, because I think he's older than me.
No age reveals.
Oh no, she was waiting for
I'm just here, and my brain is like, can't relate, can't relate. I'm waiting.
Oh, man.
no,
No,
I
but
think
you know what? It's not just you. Every time I talk to my nephews about how the internet was, they don't believe me. I said, no. I go, literally, you can't be on the phone. They're like, what do you mean you can't be on the phone and on the computer at the same time? I go, yeah. I go, and these computers, they were massive. They're not these little things that you have now, And then I was cleaning out my stuff when I was moving, and I actually had a disc, not a floppy, but the smaller three, was that 3.5 the five, the harder discs, not the
Mm.
floppy disk. That probably Nate is the only one who understands what I'm talking about. But you know, before, when you wanted to save things, we didn't have thumb drives. We had what they call a floppy disk, which was really floppy, and you stick it in the computer, and that's how it's going to save the data. And you're limited with the space, so you don't really, you know, you can't save everything. And then they got a little bit smaller, which had more, but that's what my nephew saw. And they're like, what's that? I go, that's where you save all your stuff. They're like, huh?
Why? Just
So,
put it on the cloud.
yeah, we didn't
Oh,
have
man.
clouds. When you're talking about the clouds, it's that white thing in the air outside.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I'm like imitating like what generation would it be? Gen Z? Like Gen Z.
Careful. I don't know what May's Gen is. It? Are you Gen Z, May? No.
I can say Gen Z. I'm Gen Z. Okay.
Oh, you are. Okay, so
Okay, so we are in the same generation. Okay,
yeah.
because the furthest I go is, I think the
Mm.
CD. That's the
Oh,
furthest
yeah.
Got
I
it.
go in
Mhm.
saving files. CD.
Got it.
I
Okay.
think
Okay, see,
mine was
that was like
VHS.
that was way after the floppy and the other disc.
Yeah.
And then that's like high tech already when the CD first came out. That was high tech.
Arne would say though, I feel like for us, for my family in particular, we skipped dial-up and went straight to Wi-Fi. Because at the time, like like dial-up wasn't just it was just not an option for us. Like I remember like before we got Wi-Fi,
Well,
what
we
like,
had no choice.
you know, or
That's all
before
we had.
phones. Yeah, before phones, we were using radios that you had to like find the right frequency and if somebody's on that frequency, guess what? They're listening in as well to the conversation. Because I remember we had that like radio thing. Like it's like you had like two dials on top that you had to tune.
It's like listening to your grandparents a little bit. It kind of feels that way, and then just the like trailing down gradually, like hearing what they went through, and then like you're like, oh, at least I didn't have to go through that. And then you become that when you're older, when you're talking to the younger generations, like, and they're like saying that to you, like, oh, at least I didn't have to go through that.
And the one thing I do remember, I don't know, Nate, if you're going to remember this at all, is they used to have the party line. Okay. And that's when you're like on the phone and somehow other people's line kind of intertwines with yours. So you could hear conversations from other people
Yep.
because of the way the lines were like meshing together. But it wasn't like it was intentional. It was just, it wasn't modern technology. And so, you know, you would have the thing where you could hear other people talking. And I just thought that was pretty interesting because then after a while, me and whoever I'm talking to, we just wouldn't say anything and try to listen in on their conversation.
You know,
That's a
Tony,
different level of tea right there. That's all you.
Tony, you brought up a point about like grandparents, and that was one lesson that I learned from like older generations. Because you know, when you're young, you're kind of distracted and you're going every which way, you know, chasing after like technology and this and that.
Mhm.
But then when you look at like older people, you see that sometimes you just, you know, when you're at like social events, they're just like sitting there and they're just like watching everyone and they're just enjoying that people are around. And I'm finding like more and more, I'm growing into that where it's like, yeah, the people that you know and are around you are going to be the most valuable things that you have in life. And so, you know, throughout like my 20s, just trying to have fun and this and that, travel and whatnot. The older I get, I'm like, wow, like I really like hanging out with my family and always keeping in touch and this and that. So that was one thing that I learned from like, you know, grandparents. It's as you get older, you're really going to value them, especially because unfortunately we have to experience loss and you know once that happens as you get older, it really starts to set in. It's like, okay, you know, the people that that I know in this life, you know, this is the only time we have with them here, so make the most of it and you know don't take it for granted because you never know if you will run into them again.
And
Yeah.
you know, that's true. I have to add to yours because my grandma, she did not want anyone to live outside of a 5 mile radius. Like all my aunts and uncles literally had to buy houses within a 5 mile radius. And I remember when I was a kid, I just wanted to leave because one, there's really nothing to do in Sacramento, right? And then, and so, but for the longest time, we all stayed home. And then when she had passed, then that's when a lot of younger ones said, oh, now we could actually leave Sacramento because she wasn't there to force us to stay. But then now that I'm here in Texas all by myself, I make every opportunity I can to go home because it's true. It's like you want to be around family, especially with your nieces and nephews. You don't know what's going to, you don't get to see all the stuff. And so now I understand why grandma wanted everybody there, because then everyone grew up together. Like my cousins and I, we don't treat each other like cousins. We treat each other more like brothers and sisters because we all grew up together. And so that's what we're trying to, show our nieces and nephews that, hey, it is about family. So I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because sometimes it's not even just to the point of loss necessarily, but just watching people get older. Like, even whether it's the extremes of like our parents, like watching our parents get older, that's like a whole thing that I don't even want to like get into that because that can get really heavy. But from that end, and even like my niece, like seeing the way that she changes and appreciating the days when she was just like this tiny little thing, or she wouldn't go anywhere, but then now she's just talking and I have to keep up with her because she has so much energy. It's like being able to realize, how time like slips from you so quickly. I feel like when you're younger, things took forever. Like a summer felt like so long when you're in school, but then once you're older, it's like, oh, everything goes by like this. So I'm glad that you guys brought that up. That is a very as a sentimental person, that is something that I
Yeah.
try to appreciate more now for sure.
Yeah, and things change too. Because I remember when I was younger, I had FOMO, but it was of like the fear of missing out of doing things that were like fun or things that were adventurous. Now, whenever I see things going on in Sacramento, I'm like, oh man, I'm missing out on the kids' party, or oh man, I'm missing out on this, things like that. And so I think that also changes as you get older. You don't miss the going out and the hanging out stuff. Now you just miss the, oh look what the kids are doing things.
Would you say that was like your biggest surprise, Arnie, about growing older? Like that your taste changed in that way?
Yes, because when I was younger, I said, I'm going to go explore the world. I'm going to go do everything. And I am doing that. But my whole thing was, I am never going back to Sacramento because that's just not a fun place to be. But now, every opportunity I have, I'm like, hey, Nate, sorry, I'm not going to be here this weekend. I'm going home.
Wait, are you not being here this weekend?
No, I'm here this weekend. It was last weekend or the weekend before.
That's another thing about getting old. It's like I forget things a lot. So thank goodness for technology to keep my calendars in line. So that's another thing too. I think as you get older, you see technology is like what it's intended to be, not a distraction, but to like help you out, to organize things, keep track of things.
What would you guys tell your younger self, regardless of it could be like your 18-year-old self, it could be your 10-year-old self? Is there anything that you would tell them now at the point that you are in life that would maybe make, I don't know if getting older is ever easy. It might just depend on the person. I don't know if they're like what May said earlier. There's some people who are maybe ready to grow up and they're just like, let's go. I want to be in the workplace. I want to be in the corporate world. I want to.
I would definitely say don't rush. Don't rush. Because everything that you rush is easily broken. So if you rush growing up, that's no fun. But if you take it one step at a time, take it slow and understand the whole process, growing up is much more meaningful and you become more wise. It's a lot of understanding that goes with it.
I agree with that one. And also, I would have told myself to, like, the don't rush part. I rushed my way through college because I figured I'd get done sooner, then I'd get a job faster, then I could go buy things easier. Yeah, no, I kind of wish I would have stayed in school longer. And so now with my nephew, he's in a rush to get a real job and everything. And I said, no, stay in school all you want. And as long as your mom's supporting you, who cares? Don't get a job. Just explore the world, because that's like, why rush into this adulthood when it's not really fun? But the one thing I think I would tell myself is, don't take life too seriously. Because I think for so long, because I had to grow up early, because I left home to go to school and everything. So, I had to have all those responsibilities. But I think I took everything so seriously, like literally, I was like always serious. And I think that's why now I'm totally opposite of what I used to be. I used to be the type A personality where it has to be done one way or just this way. Everything else is the wrong way. And now I've learned that it doesn't matter as long as it gets done, then it's okay. So that's one thing I would tell myself.
Arnie, I would say, like, I was laughing earlier when you told yourself to not rush to, especially to get a job, because I feel like the first job I ever got, I definitely did that. I definitely rushed. I didn't check, like I didn't check, like how, like this job, like like benefit me, and I would say it's an okay like entry job, like first job. It's an okay first job, but like it did teach me like, oh, like if I'm ever if like when I quit that job, it's like, okay, if I ever look for another job, I know now what to look for, what to avoid, like, yeah, in terms of that. But I would tell myself my past self to not be afraid to make mistakes, because I feel like I let a lot of opportunities pass me before because I was afraid. Like, what if I get it wrong? What if I make a mistake, and like, especially a mistake in front of people, and I embarrass myself? Now I think I let myself make mistakes now. If I embarrass myself, then I embarrass myself. At least I learn from it. Yeah. But that's something I tell myself. I tell myself to not be afraid of those mistakes, because you're gonna like, mistakes is like normal, especially if it's your first try. And everyone makes mistakes. Maybe they laugh at me now for making that mistake, but there's gonna be a time where they're also gonna make a mistake, and I sure hope that nobody's there to laugh at them.
And so, like, Victor on the chat, he says he misses his 10-year-old self because it was easy life, just play, eat, and sleep. I totally agree with that. I do miss when you could just go outside and ride your bike and you don't even come home until the sun goes down and have no care in the world. That I do miss. And that is what I would tell the little kids. Enjoy that, because you're not going to have that when you grow up. There's no such thing as recess when you get older.
I always felt though growing up like, all right, I'm a kid now. I'm gonna be a kid. I am not gonna try to be older. So like when I was in middle school, I never tried to like get in the trends or this and that. I'm like, no, I'm a kid. I'm gonna play video games and eat bad food. Same thing in high school. I was in no rush to be an adult because in high school that you see some of your friends trying to I guess be more mature, and I'm like, nope, I'm still a kid. But as soon as I hit 18, as soon as I graduated high school, and I remember my dad told me this, and it kind of set the gravity for it. He said, "If you ever go to jail, I'm not going to bail you out." So I was like, "Whoa, okay." So I took life seriously though when I graduated high school. Like I was like, "All right, I'm done being a kid." Went to college like a week later, and I was like, "All right, I'm going to finish college as soon as possible because I want to get to work." And did that. Worked hard through college to try to finish as quickly as possible. Got the job, and that's the advice I would give like to anybody, not just to myself, like not even to my younger self. It's like enjoy that particular moment in time. There's no rush to be an adult if you're not an adult. And that's how I raise my son too. It's like, all right, he starts bringing up every now and then how he wants to like, I guess like do more mature things. And I'm like, no, don't worry about that for now. Okay. You know, really enjoy being a kid for now, and you can worry about that later. So
Well, Tony and May, I want to ask, is that, I mean, like, is that a boy thing, or is it like with girls, is like, we just want to grow up? I'm just curious because I did have a lot of guy friends who, they were a kid to be a kid until they were forced to grow up. But then I've seen, like, with me and my friends, even we kind of didn't have a choice because we were forced to cook and clean while we were young. But I don't know. For me, is that a boy thing where it's okay for them to be kids and us it's not? I don't know. I was just curious.
I mean, I feel like it really depends on the household because I have
Mm.
friends who like enjoyed childhood and they're girls too, so they enjoyed it. And yeah, I guess it really depends. And I'm not gonna dive into psychology, but then there is a study about that, why women had to mature early on than men. But then once men start to mature, it hits different. And same with women. That's why. So
I would say main, like what you said there. I can still remember like the moment where I felt like I woke up and I was like, man, I need to grow up. I can't, like, no, I quite literally, I, I would say, I mean, I still, like now it's sort of like calmed down, but I remember like that moment, when that moment hit for me, like, for the longest time, I just stopped, I stopped playing video games. I was looking up jobs. I was like, okay, what do I need to, like, I need to learn how to do this by when I hit like 23. I need to learn how to do this. I need to learn how to do that. I need to be able to, the way I worded it, it's like stand on my own 2 feet by this age. Or if I if I miss this deadline, then my entire life's just gonna, I'm gonna be behind everyone else. So,
Well,
but
my answer is like different because, and this is will be my closing remarks as well. There are definitely situations where we have to rise to the occasion and be mature and make sure that we get stuff done. But what I've also been trying to do for myself personally is to still make time for play. I think that's still an important aspect of life that we don't need to be afraid of, or like what Arnie said earlier, like don't take yourself too seriously. And I can feel that in myself, like with the more responsibilities that I have, I can feel myself getting more serious, which is unfortunate because I know a lot of my friends, they're very used to me being a certain kind of goofy way. And I know that about myself, that it's still there. And certain situations can kind of bring it out. But if you are more intentional about it in the spaces that you allow that to come out, like when you're with your people that you care about, when you're with people that you love, that you are giving that yourself that freedom to be goofy, to be silly, to to have fun, to be kid like, that's also good for us to kind of not lose that completely. Not that you're going to do foolish things. That's not what we're campaigning for, but just to kind of give yourself that space to still have fun in good ways that can bring you closer to the people that that love you. And so I don't know. I don't know if we ever fully really grow up. In some situations, yes, maybe, but we have that little
I would say,
charm
Tony,
about us.
growing. Yeah, I would say just last thing. It's the thing with I feel like the thing that really makes you mature and grown up is like realizing when you can play, but also knowing when you should take things seriously. Right?
Well, because some people, when they mature, they become too serious all the time, and then
Yes.
they never have one. That's the thing. So it's like it's balancing that maturity, and then but also still giving yourself that space. So there's a lot of things that those who are listening to us right now, I don't know how old our audience is. Maybe some of them are in the middle age and they're recollecting on their childhood, or hopefully we have some younger viewers that are tuning into this as well. I love the last bits of advice that were given in terms of don't rush through things, and being able to be present, and of course family, appreciating that time with family. All those are good things to kind of remember. Growing up comes with a lot of growing pains. Growing pains in different ways, could be physically with how you react to food, or the aches and the cracks as you as you get older, maybe needing to stretch or exercise more. There's a lot of things that comes with getting older, and it may not always be easy, but we do it to make sure that we mature and we get ourselves to become better versions of ourselves, but also still keep that charm about yourself and being able to have fun as well. So we hope that you guys benefited from our talk today, and you can share this with someone who might be struggling with getting older. Different things, different realities that we face all the time. I'm Tony Rose Valenzuela, broadcasting here from Sterling Heights, Michigan, along with my friends Arnie, EJ, Nate, and May. And this has been INC Radio Chatline, where we like to have conversations that matter. Drop there in the comment section for a topic that is important to you, and we'll see if we can talk about it. We'll see you guys again, same time next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.